Welcome back to another edition of the Mael Time Podcast. I'm joined today with Judi Felber, a immigrant to Israel. Her son, Nathaniel Felber, was very seriously injured in a terrorist attack in 2018, and she's joining us today just to talk a bit about Natanel, what happened to him, what's going on, and her take on how things are shaking out. So, Judi, thanks so much for joining the program today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to start with the fact that you're from the United States originally and made the decision to move to Israel. Why did you make that decision?
I've always been a Zionist. I've always wanted to live in Israel. And at one point in our life, things were changing in our life. And we said, well, let's just go to Israel for a year and see what happens. And then 1 year turned into 2 years. Then we made Aliyah. And then we just stayed. Natanel was 9 years old when we moved here.
Okay, and how many children do you have?
I have 3 children. Daniel is my oldest, then Nadina, and Natanel is my youngest. So Daniel was 14 when we moved here, Dina was 12, and Natanel was 9. And we moved
What
to
was that
Renana.
like moving at those ages? Because it's not like they knew the language, I'm guessing, in the same way that if you're moving at
Right.
really young kids, it would look like.
So we moved to Renana because there are a lot of Anglos, a lot of support for English speakers. Daniel got off the plane, kissed the ground, and said, I love it. And he's not going to leave. Adina said, what? What'd you do to me? What do you... And then it's now, he's always been okay, whatever, I'll make the best of whatever situation it is. And in fact, there are a lot of English speakers. When Daniel started school, there was somebody who basically sat next to him and translated everything. Adina had a rough time, and that's now in his class, 10 of the boys in his class spoke English at home. So it was an easy landing. But then when he started 7th grade and started a new school, I said to the principal, put him in a class without so many English speakers. And he panicked and didn't know what to do. And they put him in Ulpan in class and whatever. But by the end of high school, his friends were all Israeli. And when he went to the yeshiva, they said, why do you call, when you call your mother, why do you speak in English? And he said, so she'll understand me. But they didn't think of him as an English speaker. They thought of him as Israeli, and he was very Israeli.
And how did it go for you and your husband integrating into
We
this?
moved to Renana, so for
Okay.
a long time, I don't have to speak I don't have to speak Hebrew. I don't have to learn Hebrew. There's much going on. I work as an editor in English. People don't hire me for my Hebrew. And my husband's a patent attorney, and he helps Israelis get patents in America. So English is the way to go. But when Natanel was injured, we were in the hospital, and the doctors speak English. Well, his neurosurgeon was American, spoke English,
Well,
but not.
let's take one step back. How you mentioned Natanel's injury. Can you frame exactly what happened to Natanel, and also, uh, as I understand, this terrorist cell actually took the life of someone else a week or so before.
Okay, so on the 13th of December, 2018 was a Thursday. The Sunday before, there was a terror attack. He was injured in Givat Asaf, which is near Beit El. The Sunday before in Ofra, which is just down the road, there was a terror attack with two brothers. They went by in a car and shot people standing at the bus stop. People were injured. One woman was pregnant and she lost the baby. And so they knew that there were things going on. And they knew there was a lot more. So instead of having 2 soldiers at the bus stop at Gifat Asaf, they had 3. So there were 2. So at the time of the terror attack, the terrorist came in a car with Israeli license plates because he had just bought it from an Israeli Arab. So the story is, and so the boy, and he does not look. He has sort of reddish hair. He doesn't look Arab at all. So when he came up close to the soldiers, they thought it was somebody from the area giving food or joining them. And he came out of the car. Natanel was standing closest to him. He was standing next to another woman at the bus stop, and he saw the man, the terrorist, took a gun, shot Natanel, and shot the other 2 soldiers. The other 2 soldiers were killed, and Natanel was shot in the head. Initially they thought that Natanel was also killed, but then the paramedic came and he said, "Wait, this one has a pulse, and this one is breathing." And they quickly got him ready and sent him to the hospital.
What was that like as a mother when you received notice that your son is in a life and death situation in the hospital?
Well, so we didn't. I did. We heard that there was a terror attack in the area, and we knew Natanel was in the area. And he didn't answer his phone so much, but I kept calling his cell phone, calling him, and there was no answer. But he's not so good at answering, so I didn't think anything of it. And the terror attack happened at 10:30 in the morning, and about 2 in the afternoon, there was a knock on the door, and it was the soldiers, and they said, "Your son's in life-threatening condition. Pack up a bag and come right now." And I said, "What do you mean? What are we supposed to do?" And so we just packed up what we could in a small backpack and went. And on the way to the hospital, they said, "Call your." My daughter was a flight attendant, and she was on El Al. She was in Hong Kong. So what they did for her, as soon as they found out, they told her, we couldn't get in touch with her because she was in the airport and she wasn't answering her phone, but they turned off the Wi-Fi on the plane so nobody could find out anything. Then an hour before she landed, they told her, and then she came to the hospital. But it was much after, that was much later. My son was a student, and we called, the Army said, "Call him on your phone and we'll talk to him." And they said, "Daniel, get in a cab and come to the hospital right away." And then we called the doctor, and the doctor said, "It's a traumatic brain injury. We don't know if he's going to live or not. Hurry up and get here." So when we got there, we didn't know anything. When we got there, he was still in surgery. We talked to the neurosurgeon, and he said the next 72 hours are critical. If he makes it through this, there's a chance he'll survive, but we don't know in what condition, and we won't know anything. And even after 2 months, they said, "We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if he will wake up, if he'll be in a vegetative state. We don't know anything. We don't know, but this is what it is." So.
But where is Natanel holding now? It's been almost
6
7
years,
right? 6
it's
years?
been 6 years.
6 years.
So he spent 2.5 months in the ICU. Then he went to rehab, and took him about 7 months from the injury to wake up from his coma. So that was a promising thing. But he's been in rehab ever since. Now he lives at his apartment with 2 caregivers, two full-time caregivers. A Filipino caregiver lives with him, and a team of 3 Israelis rotate. And so he's always with 2 people, because it takes a lot of work to take care of him. He can do nothing for himself. He everything. He needs 100% nursing care. But he smiles, and the other day, one of the caregivers, the caregiver woke him up, and Natanel went like this. So wow. I knew that he could, and the caregiver's like, "Wow, that's like something from the hostages, one of the hostage, because she lost her fingers. He must know that." And I said, no. It's the sign of "I love you." And so he can go like this and say, that he likes something. He can say, no, he doesn't like something. He has a communication device that he can use, but it's really, we need to prompt it. We need to tell him. He doesn't give anything to us. We can ask him, and he can answer yes or no or whatever. But he's getting better, so that's good.
So you see progress.
Yeah.
Over time.
There's always progress. He's always doing better. So thank God, he's always on the road to recovery, or to getting better. I mean, I don't know where he's going to be in 5 or 10 years, but Ministry of Defense has, we officially have 2 full-time caregivers for the rest of his life. So I don't think he's never going to be an independent guy, but it is what it is.
Did the terrorists that attacked him survive? Were they?
Unfortunately.
And are they still in prison? Are they?
There was one. There were 2 brothers at the first one. The Army killed one of them, thank God, and the other one went to injure. So he is in prison for now. And when he was sentenced, the sentence was 5 life sentences, never to be exchanged in a prisoner exchange. But I don't know what that means. after
Has
hearing.
the army reached out to you, or has anyone reached out to you about the chance that he might be released in the current hostage deal?
No, and he's not on any list that will be to be released.
Okay. Now I
His
want,
cousins will be all released, and his
yeah.
relatives are being
So
released.
I want to ask you what your thought is on the release of these terrorists from Israeli prison, as someone who's had direct family member, your son, uh, have his life changed and altered by as a result of this terrorism. What's your thought on the concept of your son's killer potentially being, or excuse me, your son's attacker um, potentially being released in a deal?
Um, I can't imagine what those families are going through. I've met families who their family members were killed by the terrorists who were released for Gilad Shalit before October 7th. And it's horrifying to think that this person was in jail, away from society, and then we just let them out. But um, I can't imagine what it would be like to know that my son's shooter was being released, because then he would be out on the street. I don't know. I mean, he changed my life forever, and he can just go walk free.
I was with someone just yesterday who survived a brutal terrorist attack in Hebron, and the joke, it's not a joke, it's very sad, but you know, there's a number of organizations that raise money and try to help victims, survivors of terrorist attacks. And I said that it's quite ironic that people are raising money to help the survivors, and then someone who attacks someone and isn't killed can go to jail. His family gets paid a stipend, and he can maybe get a college education. And then after 10, 15, 20 years, to be released back into society in an exchange. I said, this is absolutely upside down. Just conceptually, how the taxpayer in Israel is paying for his care, while the survivor, yes, the Mishrad B'Tachon is very involved when it comes to soldiers, and there's other institutions that do help, but there's always certain things that people could benefit from additionally, and it's mind-boggling to me as an observer.
Yeah, it's there were there were Israeli Jews who had to wait months to get into rehab, but then there were Arabs in the rehab, and I don't know what their connection to anything is. Here they are, but even so, in the hospital, they're taking up hospital beds of from Israelis.
Right, you have
The
terrorists
Yeah,
that
the
survive.
terrorists are taking up hospital beds and hospital supplies and time and effort and getting great care.
I want to ask about the support system for your family after what happened to Natanel. There's a lot of focus that people have now on caring for families and trying to offer assistance both to bereaved families and those who have suffered life-altering injuries. Who was really there for you as like independent organizations, and what input and advice do you have for those who unfortunately just entered similar circumstance to your family?
First of all, I have to say the Ronana community was amazing. They took us under their wings, and they helped us with everything, anything that we could need or do or whatever. We needed a ride somewhere. They brought us food. They were there for us. They were amazing. Our neighbors, I think we're all a bunch of Anglos who've all made Aliyah, and so we were sort of the face of what could happen to, I was so, oh, my kids are going to the army. Isn't this exciting? I'm so proud of them, but there's a downside as well. So,
And unfortunately, Renana has paid the not the highest, but one of the highest prices
yeah,
in this war. And there's so many heroes that came from
yeah,
there that lost their lives.
right. So, but there's a Daniel said, my older son said, like it's different. Like we have no end. We have no. There's no It's I can't imagine having a chair empty for, and think about my son's birthday and where is it, whatever. But there's it just continues on and on. His yeshiva, Natanel's yeshiva was really, really helpful as well. His rabbi, who I had issues with before, I think he's just amazing.
What yeshiva?
He was in Maoz, which is in Lod, and then his rabbi, just as Natanel went to the drafted, he left there and moved to Petach Tikva. So now he goes to Petach. Now when Natanel goes to visit his friends in yeshiva or whatever, it's in Petach Tikva. And that his Rav Uzi has been amazing. He's been there for Natanel from the beginning. He jokes. He says, "We have Hey Tevet is the Hebrew date of the terror attack." He said, "We have the party on Hey Tevet because that's his rebirth day, and you have the party for him on Kaf Gimel Iyar on May 30th when it's his birth date." And the guys from the yeshiva, we just had the party. They came, they danced with him, they visited him. They visited him the Shabbat before. Some 4 guys came and they stayed with us to visit him. It's really, really, really nice. Ministry of Defense has been there with us. Anything that what to do. I'm sure there's more that people are arguing and there's more that they could do, but because of my language skills, I just don't get. I'm sure there's more that he could get, but he gets a lot. One family has been really helpful with us as well.
Shout out to the Bellsbergs, doing amazing work.
Yeah, I remember when Mindy came to the hospital from the first day, and she said, people will say that we'll be with you at the beginning, but as time goes on, life gets in the way, but we'll always be with you. And you know what? She was right.
It's one of these. So one of the projects that we've taken on as part of what we're doing with Unit 11741 and equipment has been an online commemoration for soldiers that fell. And very quickly, I realized that we needed to also start including soldiers that were from earlier wars. And the messages that we get are empowering and also sad, because I have mothers that send us messages saying, "I can't believe that you posted about my son." It's not, nobody posts about my son. And when you hear organizations that are there and actually taking and really are there for the long haul, it really is a huge, huge thing. And it's encouraging to hear one family doing that.
Yeah. There are also a couple of organizations by and for injured soldiers. One is called Belev Echad, based in New York, and the other one is Achim L'Chaim, which is also, and they really help a lot. Natanel goes to Belev Echad for different, to be with the guys, and he goes to different things with Achim L'Chaim, and Achim L'Chaim also has a group of guys who come to visit him. So he has friends, and it's nice. It's really, really nice.
We had a few different soldiers that we met along the way from Belev Echad and helping their units with equipment now that they couldn't themselves fight. And the brotherhood that I see that comes from there is truly amazing, and it provides a sense of community. And shout out to Rabbi and Rebbetzin Vigler and Gabe and Yaron for what they do, everything there with Belev Echad. It truly is amazing, and it's one of these things where I wish that people just all of a sudden got it and they understood the value of the community, but we really can't stop promoting how important it is that you have these support systems, because the war is not over when someone gets injured. Yeah, they might not be in combat, but that's the beginning of a new, different kind of war, which is the fight to provide some sort of normalcy in your life and also for your family. And I can only imagine what it's like as a mother when you are concerned about your child's well-being and will he have people that care about him. And when you see organizations that are sending representatives and are welcoming him with open arms, I can only imagine what that feels like. As someone who, as a mother of a soldier who was injured in a day-to-day operation Have you reached out or had any contact with, I guess, new members of the unfortunate club as a parent?
So it's interesting. I told you there's Belev Echad, for and by injured soldiers in Achim L'Chaim, but until now, there was nothing for family members of injured soldiers or people who were injured. There's a little bit. One family does a little bit, but it's easier to specialize in dead than wounded, because wounded just keeps going on, and there's not really anything for mothers of wounded soldiers or siblings of wounded soldiers. There's a lot for mothers of soldiers who've been killed or people who've been killed in terror attacks, but there's not. And because until this war, I thought, wow, it's something that's really missing. And now they have things for family members and for mothers. And I realize I'm not part of that. I'm not really part of that, because Natanel's not in the hospital. He's not going through the initial surgeries, the initial therapies, whatever. He's just on and on and on. So I don't have so much in common with those mothers, but and I can see that the mothers of the injured soldiers that Natanel has known from before, they also aren't interested. They're not interested in getting together because they've passed that. Their kids, for the most part, their kids are getting married, going to school, getting on with their lives. The kids, the soldiers, still remember being injured and being in therapy and being this and that. But the mothers and the families, like, they've sort of gone on. It kind of like when your kid goes on to university or whatever, they're an adult. They get married. They don't come back to mommy anymore. And it's sort of like Natanel is still always going to be with mommy, but most of the other soldiers won't.
Right. So you're essentially, if someone, God forbid, loses a leg, that's traumatic, and it has an impact on the family, but he can be self-sufficient with the prosthetic and try to rebuild some sense of a normal life. And in Natanel's case, with a traumatic brain injury, he's in a very unique category. Are there many soldiers that you're aware of that are in similar circumstances?
There are a couple, and I've met those mothers. Because I've met a couple of the mothers with kids who've had traumatic brain injuries. And now I'm trying to start working with a group that works with people who've had traumatic brain injuries and still suffering from. So I guess that's more of for me, the support comes more from other people who are family members of people who've had traumatic brain injuries rather than soldiers.
Right. That makes sense. And what are you trying to do with people that have
So I have a friend who started an organization called Koach Eitan to help people with aphasia, which means aphasia is the inability to speak, knowing what you want to say, but having trouble with language, the speaking, the understanding, the reading. So, like, I try to explain to somebody, you think, well, I was going to say that. No, that word is just on the tip of my tongue, and you can't. I know what I want to say, but what's the name? What's that word? And you can't think of it. But that's what somebody with aphasia goes through all the time with everything. And so those people, with traumatic brain injuries, they're always going to need help, and they're always going to be part of that group. And so we're trying to reach out to them. I'm trying to work with them and volunteer with them to help other people who are going through what I've gone through, and can understand what I've been through.
How do people get involved and try to help in that mission?
They just this past Shabbat was Shmot with Moshe Rabbeinu, and he had trouble speaking, so they wanted to make that as aphasia Shabbat. So they were doing all kinds of things. They have all kinds of. It's just started. It's a new amutah, a new organization, and they are trying to get the awareness of having people with aphasia and traumatic brain injuries. How can they integrate into the synagogue, into Jewish life, into things like that? And so that's what they're trying to do.
And if you want to send along a link or information, I'd be happy to include it in the show notes so people will know where to look. How did Nathaniel's injury affect your relationship with the state of Israel or the commitment of making Aliyah and your desire to be in Israel?
People ask me that all the time. Obviously, it makes sense. There was a soldier from Renana, an Anglo family, who was injured much before Natanel. I didn't really know them so well, but um, Ari Weiss, and his mother said at one point, somebody came to her house after the Shiva was over. She was Israeli. She came crying and she said, I'm Israeli. I moved to Los Angeles when my son was 14 so he wouldn't serve in the army, and he was killed in a car accident. My son died for nothing. Your son died for the state of Israel. And I realized, and I thought, that impacted me quite a lot. And I thought, no matter, like, I don't know what Hashem's plan is and whatever, but Natanel is here, and this is where he needs to be, and this is where we need to be. And I don't think that there would be any place better for us to be at this point. Even before this war, I don't think that there would be any place better. So
That's beautiful, and I think sometimes people in the diaspora, when they hear and see these stories, they, in some ways, are more radical in their response than people that are involved. And it's beautiful to see that you're see the I guess the positive in how that and how everything plays out in Hashem's plan. Because again, it's very easy for someone to see it on the side and say, "Wow, they it's that's what they get for making the brave move to Israel and try to support the country." But it's beautiful to see that sense of positivity. Before we close here, I'm curious as a private citizen what your thought is on Israel's standing in the Middle East. What's your thought on how the war went and what's going on?
I will say that after October 7th, I was shocked by the anti-Semitism in the world, in the rest of the world, in the United States and in Europe. I grew up in a very small town and in southwestern Pennsylvania. There was a lot of anti-Semitism there from the right. The neo-Nazis marched and whatever. But I was shocked to the core to see people protesting against Israel and after the war. I'm not sure what Israel's spot in the Middle East is, but I think that I think Israel's doing a good job. I'm also surprised that with the Houthis shooting missiles and basically closing the Suez Canal, where's the rest of the world? Don't they care about their shipping?
Right.
And no, it doesn't seem that they care. But I don't know.
Oh, and actually, you reminded me here. Just what's it been like if you have to go to a shelter with Natanel in his
Well,
current
so
case?
so when he they just so there's been a couple of times they've been in the car, and so when a missile comes and there's an alarm, they say pull over to the side of the road, get out of the car, lay down. Well, he can't do that. So what they've done, what the guys do, the caregivers, they try to find a bridge, they try to go someplace. There's really nothing you can do when he's in his house and in his or is in a place that has a shelter. He can go in his wheelchair there. In the middle of the night, to get up, to get him, to unhook him from whatever he's hooked up to, put him in a chair and get him to the bomb shelter, to get him to the bomb shelter in his apartment, the mamad in his apartment, is probably takes longer than 90 seconds, which is the time we have in Renana. But we do the best we can.
That has to
So,
be absolutely petrifying. Just the idea that
yeah, you just have to be very calm and just say, okay, this is what we have to do. Let's unhook this, get the wheelchair, put him in, and take him over. We have what would he, now he has a regular wheelchair, but he used to have a wheelchair that had a tilt and a headrest and whatever, and you could put it out because he couldn't sit up really. And so we take that wheelchair, we put him in that wheelchair to put him in the mamad, so that if he has to sleep, we can just put him on that wheelchair and he can sleep there. And we have everything that he could possibly need in the mamad. If we were thinking about switching his room to the mamad, so we would never have to do anything, but no. His bathroom is right now in his room. It's straight to a bathroom. If he was in the mamad, they would have to take him from the mamad to shower him or whatever to the bathroom, then shower him and do everything, and then take him back, and that's less convenient. And if we lived in where there were, if God forbid there should be a lot of missiles all the time, then we'll do that. But at this point, we're just gonna keep him where it is.
I think it's important for listeners, viewers, to actually just hear the life choices that you have to make and what you're going through, because it's not normal. Somehow it's been normalized, and you see the red alert app and okay, another rocket. Oh, okay, another rocket. And somehow we've kind of been desensitized to it, but especially with Natanel, it's
Yeah.
completely wild.
Yeah, Natanel's caregivers are all from Akko, and they just go. They for a while when there was the North, they were just back and forth, back and forth. Their kids didn't go to school. They didn't really leave their house, and they came to Renana, and they would say, yeah, people are walking on the street. You don't see that in Akko because everybody has to be really close to a shelter. And if that were the situation in Renana, we would switch his room because there's no way we could do it any other way.
Right. Judi, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story, Natanel's story, your family story. And God willing, you should continue to recover and make big strides. And I hope that you and your family can continue to be as strong as you are, because it's insanely inspiring to hear your positivity and your commitment. And I just really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Thanks. Can I just say there was one other group that definitely helped us a lot, and that was Netzach Yehuda. The group, Netzach was in Netzach Yehuda, which is for the Haredi soldiers, and they have been here with us. They've been with us a lot as well.
And I'll just say this with, and maybe you have something to add on this, maybe not, but we've had I'd say disproportionate interaction with Netzach Yehuda because we're trying to help with equipment, and they're not one of the famous infantry battalions that are going or Sayeret units that are necessarily going to get the top stuff. Do you remember when Natanel was in the army having to talk about equipment stuff at all, or no?
No.
Okay.
It might have been other people may have talked about it, but because of the language barrier and the cultural barrier, I didn't even know what was going on. I do know that he had rabbis that he was really close with, and he's still really close with some of those rabbis. And the Rasar they come every year on Hanukkah to light a Chanukiah at Natanel's place. They send soldiers. There's something next week I think they're having for soldiers. They're just a great organization. And
they're resilient. It's not easy what they've done through so much. And yeah, no, I really that's amazing to hear. And I can only imagine how strengthening it is for the soldiers to see Natanel. I know they're going to visit and lift his spirits, but I know that he's lifting theirs a lot, because to see him pushing and always making progress is it's a beautiful thing. And
he's a great guy. I have to say, Natanel was an easygoing, happy guy before he was injured, and he's an easygoing, happy guy after. He just can't do as much as he used to. I mean, he's not as independent as he used to be.
Does he understand? Is he capable? Like, he understands exactly what happened, or?
I'm not sure what he understands and what he doesn't. But a couple of years ago, I had a friend, and she did this muscle testing thing. I'm not sure exactly what it is, And she said, I can tell what somebody's thinking just by testing their muscle, whatever. But she was the first one, really, who brought up to Natanel what happened. Does he remember? And she was working with him, and he had a seizure. So I'm sure he understood, because it was his first seizure that he'd ever had. It was his first seizure at home, not at a hospital, not when he was in a hospital setting. So I'm sure he understands. She said that he didn't really he didn't remember anything right after, but he remembers seeing the terrorist, and he remembers what then that's all he remembers.
Wow. That
So
it's wow. I yeah. Made of something else, honestly, because the strength to keep being positive and happy and push forward, and it's inspiring. There's not really much else I can add beyond that, because it's every reason in the book to not be positive or happy and easygoing, and to see that is it's really special. So I appreciate you taking the time to share your story and Natanel's story, and God willing, continue to see progress.
amen. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you.